Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, if you want to send me any feedback on the show, you can do so by sending me an email at jonahlupton@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Today's guest is Nick Desai. He is the co-founder of a company called Heal. The website is heal.com. That's HEAL.com. I've actually been following this company for a couple of years. When they first came out, I remember the launch. I remember seeing some PR, thinking it was an incredible idea, and then 2 years later, here they are, just crushing it. Currently, they're operating all throughout California. The company is actually based in the LA area, but they're in LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and then they've also moved east to the Washington D.C. and Virginia area. And I would assume that considering things are going pretty well, they could be coming to a city near you pretty soon. Company's raised $51 million from some incredible investors. They have some pretty well-known angels as well as a couple celebrities as their investors. So I'll ask Nick about that in a minute. Heal is I hate to use the word on demand, but it's sort of on demand because they are delivering healthcare professionals to your home. But I know Nick can do a much better job of explaining that. So let's welcome him to the show. Nick, how are you, man?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So talk to us about Heal. Like I said, I remember you guys coming out a couple of years ago. I've tracked the progress. You guys are just doing amazing. What's it been like? I mean, or at least take us back to 2015 when you guys got launched. What was that launch like? How did you guys prepare for it?
You know, it's very interesting because it's difficult to healthcare before you launch anything. There's a massive regulatory set of stuff you have to do, whether it's getting malpractice insurance in place, workers' comp, hiring doctors, which is not, like hiring it's not anyone who can drive a car, right? There's 300,000 total primary care doctors in the country. There's HIPAA compliance, there's privacy, there's all of these different things that we had to do prior to launch. So a lot of our pre-launch time was focused on the kinds of detailed execution and compliance and regulatory setup that most companies don't think about that early in their life cycle. That being said, when we did launch in March of 2015, it was very exciting. It was, we took the service live just in West LA at that point, in the West Los Angeles area of Southern California. And we literally, I worked along with a guy named Jason Shafton, who was on our team, who's still on our team as SVP of Marketing. We would go to farmers markets in the local area every weekend and, take a lot of booths and hand out flyers talking about, hey, we can have doctors that come to your house.
Really?
My wife, who was our...
That was the original growth marketing hack?
That was the original hack, is we literally stood at farmers markets every Sunday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. We also knocked door to door. We also did some other local digital marketing and stuff, but really it was that. And my wife, who's our chief medical officer and my co-founder, Dr. Renee Dua, and a couple of pediatricians we had at the time would be available to go take the house calls. And in that I still remember the day we first got the first house call, the day we got 2 in a day for the first time, the day we got 5 in a day for the first time. And then over the first year, we saw about 1,500 patients and delivered high-quality medicine to adults and children in the privacy, comfort, and convenience of their own home.
In the very beginning, these doctors that were doing the house calls, did they have, an existing business that they were kind of skipping out on in the middle of the day to go make these calls, or were they really just dedicated to Heal?
No, from the very beginning, if they worked for Heal, they were at least contractors for Heal. So the hours they were available to Heal, they were not doing any other work. They were so in the very beginning, we would have doctors on the pediatric side, sort of sitting around waiting for patients, right? We were paying the doctors regardless of whether there were patients or not early on. Of course, now there's more demand than there is supply, so it's a great problem to have.
Absolutely. Now, you guys raised money at what point? You raised money before you launched, correct?
Yes, we raised $1.5 million before we launched. Then after we launched and got about 2 months, about 3 to 4 months of traction in the fall of 2016, we by the time we had seen probably 500 total patients or so, I want to say, we raised another $11.5 million, and then we raised this last fall in November of 2016, we, about a year after that 11.5, we raised another $37 million in an A round.
So in that seed round, one of the investors listed on Crunchbase is Lionel Richie. I assume that's the well-known musician.
Yes, it is the well-known musician.
So how did that come about?
It's a very interesting story. I would love to tell you I was an original part of the Commodores and took a turn to tech or in startups, but that's not the story. The reality of the situation is that Heal has attracted an incredibly diverse group of investors because it's healthcare. Everybody gets sick. Everybody needs a doctor. And everybody hates going to the doctor's office. Everybody hates going to the ER, and everybody hates going to the urgent care. The problem is exacerbated when you are a global celebrity like Lionel Richie because paparazzi want to know what's going on, right? And you don't want to share your health information with anybody, right?
Good point.
So Lionel Richie was introduced to us by a friend of a friend who knew we were raising money, and he called me one Friday afternoon and said, hey, Lionel Richie wants to meet with you about investing in Heal, and come to the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills at 4:00 today. And I thought it was a joke. I really did, right? and I went to the Peninsula, and we waited, and Mr. Richie showed up with his girlfriend, and he heard the idea, and literally within 10 seconds of the pitch, he got up, stood up on his chair, gave me a high five, and he said, I'm in. He said, this is a problem we need to solve. Now, what's been interesting in getting to know Lionel and his girlfriend very well is Lionel is extremely astute about healthcare. I mean, he's not just a wealthy, celebrity who happens to have money to put in a company. He's extremely astute about healthcare. And one of the few investors we had early on that truly recognized the frustration and the problems doctors face in delivering healthcare, and that the way we were solving the problem for doctors was a very attractive part of Heal to him.
So with doctors, okay, so these are doctors that were contracted by you. Had they been doctors in other healthcare systems and just became frustrated with the entire system, how things operated, how slow, maybe patient care wasn't at the high quality that they expected? Like what was their pain point and their interest in getting involved with Heal?
The pain point for doctors is manifold that Heal solves. Fundamentally, let's start. There are 300,000 primary care doctors in America. The U.S. Center for Disease Control, this is a stat that will blow you away. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control estimates that for an average primary care doctor to provide quality health care to a comprehensive primary care, as it's truly defined, to their entire census of patients, the average doctor would have to work 21.7 hours a day.
Wow.
365 days a year, which means the average doctor is unable, because of the system, because they have to see 40 patients a day and they don't want to work 22 hours a day, the average doctor is providing inadequate care. And that is the single most frustrating thing to doctors. Just as teachers get frustrated when there's 40 kids in the classroom, not because they get paid the same money when there's 40 or 15 kids, but they can actually do effective teaching when there's 12 or 15 kids as opposed to 40 kids in the classroom, right? Doctors go, and you don't go into primary care to become a multimillionaire anymore. You go into primary care because you actually like practicing great medicine, and the frustration primarily is you can't truly be a primary care doctor, right? But there are other frustrations, which is doctors' offices are typically open about 8:30 or 9 to 4:30, which means those are the hours in which you have to see patients, which means there's 40 patients a day, which means you have 7 minutes with a patient, which means that's your paid time with the large group or practice you happen to work at. Then you either sit at the office or go home, and the average doctor spends between 500 and 900 hours a year of unpaid time doing the charting and the follow-up for all of these patients because they don't have time in the office, right? They also don't have scheduling flexibility. The average doctor working in a large group has less say over their own schedule than a guy working at McDonald's, right? We solve those problems by our average visit with the patient is 25 minutes in length, not 7 minutes in length, okay? Our doctors see about 14 patients a day, not 40 patients a day. And because we're open 12 hours a day, 365 days a year, our doctors are able to pick the hours they want to work, whether they want to work weekends, whether the evenings, the daytime. If you're a Jewish doctor and you want the Jewish holidays off, well, maybe you don't mind working Christmas, or you're a Hindu doctor and you don't mind working, you don't want to work Diwali, but you want to work this, right? They can really adapt around their personal life preferences, and that lifestyle factor is really important to a quality of life for people who've spent a lot of years in school. And lastly, doctors spend about, according to Forbes magazine, over 55% of their time on paperwork and bureaucracy. With Heal, we've built technology to eliminate that and automated all of the inefficiencies and back office processes in medicine. So our doctors spend basically 0% of their time on paperwork and bureaucracy. Their charting is done directly on an iPad, and they're driven between patient 1 and patient 2's house by a medical assistant who accompanies them. So in the 20 minutes between patient houses, they can finish the charting on the patient, so there's zero unpaid time with Heal. So for all those reasons, we're really a magnet for quality doctors.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would certainly think as a well-funded tech startup, you guys would be building your systems and efficiencies, from the beginning using, just the best software, and just putting a lot of time and research into how to make how to make every minute of the doctor's day as efficient as possible. Because certainly when I walk into a doctor's office and I sit there for an hour and then I see my doctor for 5 minutes, and then there's a whole bunch of paperwork and I got to fill this out and that out, and it's just, obviously things are not done as efficient as possible. So
yeah, well, and so there's a joke. I mean, it's kind of a sad joke about the state of affairs in medicine, but it's, you wait 3 weeks to get an appointment to see a doctor and then 3 hours in a waiting room to see a doctor for 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And the average patient will, in terms of asking their questions, will get to talk to doctor, will speak for 12 seconds before the doctor interrupts them. And it's not the doctor's fault or the patient's fault, right? It's a system that crams so many people into a waiting room that the doctor doesn't get to practice medicine the way it's supposed to be practiced.
Now, you started this business with your wife, correct?
Yes, my wife, Dr. Renee Dua, is our chief medical officer and co-founder.
What's it like being a husband and wife team?
It's amazing. People ask us this all the time, expecting this, that. It's having a business partner. I've had business partners. This isn't my first startup, but having a business partner who's my wife does a number of things. First of all, I completely trust her. She's never out to get me because my financial interests are the same as hers. In fact, my overall interests are the same as hers. Second of all, she and I have completely different roles at Heal. My wife is an extremely accomplished physician who has done private practice, been chief of medicine at hospitals, has taught medicine, and she makes sure that we deliver exceptional clinical care, and I make sure we're building a technology company that has the funding and the investors and stuff it needs, and they're different jobs, so we can trust each other in the two most. If we're going to build a health technology company, you need a brilliant technologist and you need a brilliant doctor, and I'd like to say I'm brilliant, but I know she is, right? And so both of us get our jobs done, and the third thing is, what I know about her is her strength of character. What I know is that she and I raised 2 kids together. What I know is that the challenges of raising kids, and they fall and they get hurt and they do this and school and all this stuff, and the love that we have for that, nothing that's going to happen at work is more challenging than that, so that I know that this person has a strength of character. They're not going to wilt. They're not going to steal my money. They're not going to, you know what I'm saying? That all of those things are taken care of. So it's really very, very, very phenomenal.
Right. I mean, they say like having a founder is like having a husband or wife. It really needs to work like a marriage.
Except this is one where you've worked out the pains of growth already.
Right. What were you doing before this?
Oftentimes, people will start a company together because they met at some co-working or networking event. They both have an idea. They get along to spend 10 hours together over a couple of weeks, and they think, let's start a company. My wife and I have been together for 9 years, right? So
Right.
We've worked out the kinks of how to interact with each other better than the average co-founders have.
Do you talk business at home, or was that like one of the deal breakers going into this, was saying, okay, we have to leave all the business stuff at the office. Once we get home, we can't talk about Heal, or do you guys talk about this business 24/7?
It's interesting. We don't talk about Heal at home, but it's not a rule we set day one, okay? In the sense that it's not something we sat around and set. It's that we have a 3-year and 3-month-old and a 2-year-old son at home, and we get home and they are eager for our time, and we are eager to spend time with them, and they make sure that we don't have time to spend time with each other talking about work. I mean, we actively at this point understand the importance of avoiding it and spending time with our kids. Like literally this morning before I came here, Renee and I had our weekly hour-long offsite. That's when we talk about work. We have an hour-long weekly meeting out of the office where we go through issues, and we're not husband and wife in that meeting. We're business partners in that meeting. We go through all our issues and talk about all the stuff we need to talk about, and that's really when we talk about Heal. And it's remarkable because she and I sit in the same office space. She has her office and I have mine. But during the workday, other than that, we'll rarely get a chance to talk to each other. She's doing her job and I'm doing mine. But once we get home, our cute little guys want to spend time with us, and that's what we want our time to be spent on. Right? Is that?
Now, talk to us about what is Heal's relationship with the insurance companies, with the HMOs or PPOs, whatever they might be called.
So we are in network with all of the major PPO insurance plans in California. That is specifically Anthem Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Blue Shield of California, and I'm missing Anthem Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, and Blue Shield of California. Those are the 5 big ones. And we're in network with all of them. And what that means is that if you have our PPO insured person by those plans, which is about 15 or 17 million California people, families, I don't know the exact number, but it's right around there, you can see Heal for the exact same price as going to a doctor's office, right? And that's really important because if your copay is $30 when you go to a doctor's office, your copay with Heal is the same $30, right? So it's not just much more convenient and better healthcare. It is actually the same cost. And remember, oftentimes people can't get a hold of their primary care doctor, so they are going to their urgent care or emergency room. And compared to an emergency room or urgent care, we're always a cheaper option because even with good insurance, your typical out-of-pocket when you go to an emergency room or urgent care is between $150 and $1,500, right? That is a huge difference between that and our rate, which is a primary care copay of $30 and at worst a cash pay rate of $99 all inclusive, right? So that we're always lower cost than any other solution, or at least as low cost.
No, but you didn't have those relationships in the very beginning, right? You guys had to prove out your business model, prove that you had doctors, prove that there was demand in the market, and then you're able to develop those relationships?
Yes, that's exactly correct.
Okay. I mean, was it tricky in the beginning getting customers or getting patients to pay for Heal when they knew they wouldn't have any insurance coverage?
It wasn't because our cash pay price was $99, right? Okay. At $99, again, if your kid is sick on a Saturday, you're looking at emergency room or urgent care, which is $150 to $750 out of pocket, right? Or you're waiting 3 weeks for your doctor. And for anyone who's working and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take an afternoon off work. I'm going to pay for parking. I'm going to buy my kid a snack. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to get a nanny for my other kid, blah, 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 babysitter. You're looking at, it was such a low cost that it was very easy for doctors, very easy for patients to buy into it. Of course, being a network is that much better, and now we are. So that's great.
What determined your expansion to the Washington, D.C. area? Certainly, after you guys proved this model in California, I'm sure there was a lot of cities you could have chosen. So why did you pick the D.C. area?
Well, we wanted to be close to Donald Trump. No, that's a total joke. That's a total joke, and I assume from your use of profanity there that you are on the same page of this particular administration as I am. So that's why I made the joke. I don't know if I'm allowed to say any profanity on air, and I certainly won't about the.
I guarantee the FCC is not listening to my show, so go for it.
All I will say is you and I are on the same page on this, and Washington Post's tagline, "Democracy dies in the darkness," could not be more true. It's a very sad state of affairs, particularly what's happening with the health care bill right now. And, freedom of or secret proceedings, and the fact that they're trying to railroad a bill through that affects the health of 350 million Americans without public disclosure of any kind or any meaningful kind is really outrageous, right? It's really outrageous. But sorry, we could talk about that for an hour if you wanted to.
I'm sure.
But we picked Washington, D.C. We picked our first few markets strategically.
Okay.
If you want to be in healthcare, you want influential people to use healthcare, your service, right? We don't believe in lobbyists or this or that. We believe in people experiencing Heal and having a great experience. So in LA is a very influential town for media. LA is a very influential town for Hollywood. We have a number of celebrities invested in tweeting about and sharing about Heal. That's not the only way we market the product by any means, but having that group of people and serving their interest, again, along with everyday moms and dads all over the state, right, is very important. In the Silicon Valley, we're with the tech community, right? There are many tech companies, tech giants up there who use Heal for their employees, and there are many investors we have. One of our most prominent investors is Jim Breyer, the legendary investor from Excel Capital, who was very early investor in Facebook and a number of other, household name companies. Jim became an investor after he experienced Heal, right?
Okay.
So that's, and for the DC market, it's about influencing the people who make healthcare policy decisions and not influencing them in any way that I would consider not appropriate, even if it's legal. I don't want to write checks to lobbyists or do anything like that. I want Congress people and senators and the people who work in the Capitol and the people who work in the Department of HHS and the people who work at Medicare. They all have children, they all have families, they all have parents, and they all get sick. And on weekends they'll need care, and Heal's the best way to get care, right? So that is what our view of how to influence. So that's how we pick that market.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember when Jim Breyer first followed me on Twitter, I got all giddy because he is certainly one of the top investors out there.
Yeah, I mean, on any Midas list, he's in the top exactly. 10. We're giddy that he's in.
Yeah, you could argue that he's the best investor over the last 20 years in tech. I mean, just that Facebook bet alone, probably puts him at number one.
Oh yeah, and there's a long list of others that he has invested in equally effectively, right?
So what have been the biggest challenges? I mean, I can't even imagine how many different obstacles you guys have faced along the way, but are there a couple that stand out as the most challenging?
Yeah, I would say it's a couple things. I would say healthcare is a fundamentally broken system, right? Whether you're a Trump care fan or an Obamacare fan or a Hillary care fan or a private pay or Medicare for all or socialized medicine, whatever you are, think about how long at the presidencies are won and lost over positions on this one issue more than any other. We're bombing countries, we're doing this. Okay, Bush was bombing Afghanistan, Obama was bombing Afghanistan, Trump is bombing Afghanistan, right? Whatever. Presidencies aren't won and lost on that. Presidencies are won and lost on healthcare, right? Obama won because he promised Obamacare. Trump won because he promised to repeal Obamacare, right? Whether or not that's good for people is a separate conversation. That's how broken healthcare is, right? And it's a $3 trillion system that in some ways the fundamental fixes are easy, but they're fundamentally not being talked about by either party in Washington. Let's take off our partisan hats for a second and say the Affordable Care Act did a great thing in putting 25 million people on health insurance that didn't have it before. Phenomenal. And pre-existing conditions were covered, and great. They did nothing to make more people want to go to medical school and become doctors in the first place so that you can actually get a doctor. And your insurance card is only as valuable as a doctor you can actually see, right? So when we spend, of the entire healthcare budget in America, we spend 4% of it on the salaries of all the doctors who work in America combined, $130 billion. To put that number into perspective, we spend $400 billion a year, 3 times as much all the doctors make in America on wasted medications, prescriptions that people never take, and tests that people don't need. Okay?
That's crazy.
So how is that a challenge for Heal? Because the system is so broken that people assume there's something in the broken that must make it work, right? It's so opaque, so convoluted, and so broken that people are resistant to change because they magically assume somehow if I wait 3 weeks to see a doctor, that means the doctor must be great, as opposed to if I go to an emergency room anywhere on a Friday night, I get the resident who's stuck working Friday night shifts at the emergency room, right? I don't get the best doctor at that particular place. So overcoming the perception issue of something that's so broken that people believe innovation is impossible, that's one challenge we've had to face. The second one is in building the team here, to be perfectly honest, is, healthcare is a low margin, hard business. There's privacy restrictions, there's regulations. We have to do HIPAA training and HIPAA testing on every employee we hire. We can't do, Uber, when it grew, had a very popular marketing program. I think it still does, called a referral program, where if I referred Uber to you and you signed up for Uber and used it, well, then I got 3 free rides or $20 credit or something like that.
Right? I got I've probably gotten $1,000 worth of free rides thanks to that.
Yeah, exactly. People did that to get their own free rides because that in healthcare is called a kickback and it violates federal law, right? You can't do that marketing program. So understanding and working within the massive amount of regulatory burden in healthcare is a second challenge, and it affects the team you can hire because people want to work at startups, but they also want to work where it's fun and it's lighthearted and this, and we think we're a fun and great place to work, but it's a very serious business. We deal with life and death, we deal with healthcare, we deal with sick people, and we deal with the regulations that come with it. So I would say that's another challenge, right? The thing that's been surprisingly positive, I would say, to be perfectly honest, and I'm a pretty optimistic person, is how much people want. I have yet to pitch Heal to anybody in 2 years and 2,000 conversations I've had where people say, "Oh, house calls," and they say, "Oh, you know what? I don't like it." Right? Every single person, whether they invest or not. Yeah, every single person I ever talked to is like, "God, I hope this works." Even when people write us, our customers, if the doctor shows up late or something and we have a bad experience, the customer has a bad experience, which itself happens very infrequently, but if it does happen, even those people write us and they say, "I'm only telling you this because I really want this to work," right? Because I don't want to go to a doctor's office.
Now, talk to us about, let's see here, the customer acquisition strategy. I mean, in the early days, like you said, you guys used to go to farmers markets and hand out, flyers or pamphlets and give out information. What are you guys doing these days? Like when you launched in DC, what was your marketing strategy for that new area?
So it's a combination of things. It's a combination of digital marketing, so, on social media and stuff like that, which we tried in the first quarter of this year, but we're not really doing much anymore of. It doesn't work as well as we thought. So it's a lot of press, stuff like this, and PR and stuff. A lot of it is word of mouth. Yep. Corporate partnerships. We have a number of huge California tech companies as client partners who promote Heal to their employees. Large companies are now self-insured. That means they're on the hook for the cost of their healthcare. That means they have the same vested interest in lowering healthcare costs, and Heal's a very effective way to do that because it keeps their employees out of the emergency room, out of the urgent care, keeps them at their desk, because if you can see a doctor, if you need to take your kid to the pediatrician and you work at some tech company as an engineer for $200,000, and you leave for half a day to take your kid to the pediatrician, that's lost work time. But if the pediatrician come to your house at 5:30, maybe you'll finish your day and then go home at 5:30 and have your kid seen by a pediatrician, right? So a lot of our customers come through tech partners. A number of our insurance partners, Aetna, Blue Shield of California, are promoting Heal in their literature, on their websites, through their broker network. So they're promoting Heal as a part of what's in network. So it's a combination of those kinds of ways.
Okay, so they're not threatened by it. The insurance companies are certainly not threatened by this new type of business model.
No, in fact, it's exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite, where insurance companies that we work with are huge fans of Heal because they want to control healthcare costs. And the best way, the only way to control healthcare costs, really, because if you control healthcare costs by depriving somebody of benefits, all it means is you're not paying now, you're paying later, right?
Yeah.
Because a sick person will get
probably
sicker.
More later. Yeah.
Yes, a lot more. If I don't treat your back pain with physical therapy today, I will treat it with back surgery tomorrow. Physical therapy costs $1,000 for a year of physical therapy, or 3 months of physical therapy. Surgery on my back costs $100,000, right? Which one would you rather do? If I don't treat your flu with Tamiflu, I'm going to treat it with you being in the hospital for 3 days. If you're a senior, older person, or a young child that's susceptible to being hospitalized for a flu, right? So you either pay now or you pay later. So the only real way to control healthcare costs is to improve health outcomes. And the best way to improve health outcomes is to let primary care doctors fix primary medicine by spending more time with the patients in their home environment at the first sign of disease, and that or injury or issue, and that's what we do.
Do the doctors, when they do house calls, are they bringing a nurse or physician's assistant or someone with them?
Yes, the doctors come accompanied by a medical assistant who's a certified phlebotomist. That means
Okay.
they can draw labs, because we
Right.
draw labs in the house if you need your blood drawn or urine drawn. They're always accompanied. The MA is also a witness for the patient and the doctor. The MA takes the vitals, the MA charts, and the MA drives the car because doctors don't like driving the car.
And the doctor, between appointments, can get work done, fill out charts, stuff like that, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Between the visits, the doctors are in a passenger seat filling out the charts, doing follow-up, answering patient questions, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. What are the limitations of the house calls? I mean, certainly they're not bringing a mobile CAT scan machine with them or X-ray machines or any of that stuff. So, I mean, there is a limitation to what
Yeah.
they can do outside, right?
Other than radiological imaging, other than that, which doesn't typically happen in a doctor's office anyways, doctor's offices don't have those machines. They
That's
send you
true.
to the
Yeah.
lab.
Usually
Other
refer
than
you out.
that, we can do anything that happens in an urgent care or in a doctor's office in the privacy and comfort of your own home.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Any thoughts or announcements on where you guys might be going next after DC?
Everywhere. If you name a big city, we're going there. We're just figuring out the order, so I don't know, but I will let you know when we do.
What factors may determine that order? What are some of the things that
The insurance partnerships, the corporate
Okay.
partnerships, investor interest in that, for us coming to that market. It's a combination of factors that we look at.
Okay, cool. And what's been the biggest learning lesson for you? Is this your first business, your first company as a founder?
No, this is my fourth investor-funded startup.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what have you been able to take from those previous three that's made you a better entrepreneur, for Heal?
Uh, it's a combination of things, I would say. The first is the job satisfaction in this job is unlike any other startup, because routinely we get emails. Routinely we get emails that we saved somebody's life, right? We helped them, we did this, we did that, but literally, if a Heal doctor hadn't come, that patient might have died, was in the midst of having a heart attack. If you know you're having a heart attack, by the way, call 911. But oftentimes
Yeah.
people think they have gas and they're having a heart attack. A few weeks ago, we saw a 4-year-old, one of our pediatricians saw a 4-year-old child who the mother called Heal for the kid having a cold. It turned out the kid was having a tachycardic arrhythmia, and had they not been admitted to the hospital and seen by our doctor, the kid may have passed away, right? The job satisfaction that comes from the personal joy that comes from that, right? I'm going to read you, if you don't mind, a very short Yelp review we got just yesterday from somebody, right?
Sure, go for it.
This is from a real person. It's on Yelp. I'm not making this up. This is Yelp user Jenny S., which I'm allowed to disclose only because it's now public on Yelp. It's a 5-star review. What an amazing idea. I'm a mom of 3 kids, 5 years old and younger, and have been battling a horrible sore throat for about 2 weeks. I signed up with Heal and saw a doctor within an hour in my own dining room. The doctor and medical assistant were kind and patient. My youngest one was screaming for me from upstairs the entire visit. They were knowledgeable and walked me through my prescription and provided me with home remedies for all of my symptoms. Great doctors and amazing services. Could not be happier. I will be using this service again along with the rest of my family. Right? That's every day we get a review like that. So it's a phenomenal. So that's unique about this business. But what I've learned in the years, I'm a 47-year-old man now, and is how to be a better leader myself, to be honest, right? How to motivate and inspire people, how to connect them to a vision and a mission, how to raise money, certainly, right? That's a skill that you have to do this. And how to stay focused, right? I used to be one of those inbox zero guys, right? Like, I used to take pride in the fact that I clear out my inbox every single day, no matter what. And I've come to learn that if you spend your time doing that, you're letting the flow of inward work dictate your day, as an
Right.
example, as
Right.
opposed to
Sure.
me coming in the morning, making a list of priorities and saying, these are the things that have to get done because these are the most important things in my day, right? So learning how to be a better leader and manager, and I think related, not just having this company, but having my wife as my partner, she's not afraid to give me unabridged feedback, right? She's not afraid of getting fired. She's not afraid of, not that I would fire somebody for unabridged feedback, but there's still a boss employee relationship. My wife is not afraid to get in my face and say, I don't think you handled that in the best way, right? So that feedback helps. And lastly, being a father helps, right? Because the only thing I love more than doing this is my children, and I'm eager to get home to them, right? So it makes me efficient by nature. And B, kids teach you patience, right? They teach you patience. And being a CEO is about being persistent and about being patient, right?
So last question here before we wrap up, and I mean, I can certainly talk to you for hours because I'm just very intrigued by this space, and I'm glad that companies like you exist and that they're transforming massive industries like healthcare. But my last question would be, of all the amazing investors that you work with, that you've raised money from for Heal, what's the single best piece of advice or value add that you've gotten from one of them?
God, I've gotten a lot of great advice from investors. So let me take a minute I would say the two best pieces of advice I've gotten. One is don't be afraid to lead, right? You're a leader. You have to be a leader. It's important to get buy-in, but it's not important to build consensus, right? Don't be afraid to be a leader and pursue your vision and dream for the company. That's what we invested in. The second piece of advice was seemingly contradictory, but it's not at all, which was don't be afraid to ask for feedback on yourself, Nick. Right? I did a week and a half ago. I did a confidential employee survey to get feedback on me. Rate me on a scale of 1 to 10. What do you think I could do better? What do you like that I do? And the feedback was fascinating and it was insightful. And it created buy-in because people felt like they could even say anything to me, and it was confidential. It was anonymous, so they didn't feel like they couldn't say what they wanted to say.
And I guess I will ask one last question here is how big is your team right now at Heal? How many employees?
Well, when you include the team from the medical corporation, that's where the doctors work, and the C corporation, that's where the rest of us work. The full-time team today is probably about 100 people.
Okay, cool. And what is your best hiring tip? I mean, a lot of people listening to the show are building a startup, and certainly the people, the team are probably the most important component of building a successful startup. So when it comes to hiring great people, what single tip can you give us?
Nothing beats good luck in hiring. honestly, I would love to say I've made more hiring mistakes than the next guy, and that's absolutely something. I would love to say that work with great recruiters, and that's important, and do background checks, and make sure you spend time with people, make sure they work in startups. I could give you 50 things, but honestly, it's a hit and miss game, and you got to have some good luck in the process.
Awesome. Hey, a lot of building a startup is luck. So luck, timing, good fortune, all that stuff. So, well, thank you so much, Nick. Really, really appreciate you joining us today on the podcast. It's been a true pleasure. Wish you guys the best moving forward. Any closing thoughts for the audience?
Just if you're considering doing a startup, you're your own biggest limitation, and go for it. Right? There is no right time. There is no wrong time. Market conditions. Luck is a critical factor, and as my father always says, success in life takes hard work and luck, and the harder you work, the luckier you get. Right? So just do it.
And certainly keep an eye out for Heal because they may be coming to a city near you. Right?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nick. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.